On the evening of July 17, 1996, the sky over the Atlantic Ocean near Long Island, New York, was tranquil, dotted with the fading light of the summer sun. Transworld Airlines Flight 800, a Boeing 747-100, had just taken off from JFK International Airport en route to Paris. On board were 230 people, pilots, crew, families, newlyweds, children, students on summer travel. 12 minutes after takeoff, as the aircraft climbed through 13,700 feet, the unthinkable happened. A bright flash, witnessed by dozens along the coast, lit up the sky. In an instant, the massive jetliner exploded in mid-air, breaking apart and falling into the ocean in flaming debris. Radar screens showed the blip of TWA 800 vanish. The explosion was so violent that some witnesses described it as a missile strike. Rescue boats arrived to a sea of wreckage, burning fuel and floating bodies, but no survivors. Every life on board had been lost in just a few seconds. The National Transportation Safety Board launched what would become one of the most exhaustive investigations in aviation history. Initially, speculation ran rampant. Was it a terrorist bomb? A missile from a military exercise gone wrong? Some eyewitnesses, including trained pilots, insisted they saw a streak of light, like a rocket rise up and hit the aircraft. The FBI launched a parallel criminal investigation, interviewing hundreds of people and examining thousands of pieces of wreckage recovered from the ocean floor. Eventually, the official explanation pointed to a short circuit in the center fuel tank, which ignited flammable fuel vapors and caused the explosion. But even after the NTSB's final report, doubts lingered. The missile theory refused to die. Some former investigators and independent experts believed the missile possibility had been prematurely dismissed. Others accused the government of a cover-up. To this day, families of the victims and aviation enthusiasts continue to question what really happened that night. The mystery of TWA 800, was it an accident, or something more sinister? Almost 51 years earlier, a different kind of mystery unfolded. On December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers departed Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a routine training mission. The flight, known as Flight 19, consisted of experienced airmen and a skilled instructor, Lieutenant Charles Taylor. The weather was favorable, and the mission should have lasted just a few hours. But what followed became one of the most perplexing disappearances in military aviation history. Shortly after they completed a bombing run, radio transmissions became increasingly erratic. The pilots sounded confused. Lt. Taylor reported that his compasses had failed. "We can't find west. Everything is wrong. Strange. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should," he said over the radio. Despite efforts to guide them back, the flight group grew more disoriented. Fuel began to run low. Then silence. All 5 aircraft vanished. A massive search operation ensued, including a rescue plane with 13 men on board. That rescue plane also disappeared. Not a single trace of the 6 planes or their crews was ever found. Not a life vest, not a piece of debris. The incident became the cornerstone of what we now call the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Explanations ranged from magnetic anomalies to alien abduction to time warps. Official reports blamed navigational error and disorientation, but could not explain the complete disappearance of all 6 aircraft. Decades later, Flight 19 remains a chilling enigma, a ghost flight lost to the Atlantic, swallowed by history. Fast forward to December 8, 1972. Chicago's Midway Airport is blanketed in cold winter air as United Airlines Flight 553 begins its descent. The Boeing 737, inbound from Washington, D.C., is nearing landing when things go catastrophically wrong. The aircraft crashes into a residential neighborhood in Chicago, killing 43 people on board and 2 on the ground. The official cause: pilot error and improper use of speed brakes. But what made this crash truly mysterious were the passengers on board and the implications they carried. Among the dead was Dorothy Hunt, the wife of E. Howard Hunt, one of the men involved in the Watergate scandal. She was allegedly carrying $10,000 in cash, possibly hush money linked to the White House. Also on board were other figures rumored to have ties to the scandal, including potential whistleblowers. Soon, whispers of conspiracy emerged. Was the crash just an accident, or a politically motivated act of sabotage? The NTSB investigation found no evidence of foul play. But some journalists and former intelligence officials weren't convinced. The timing, the connections, the money, it all seemed too coincidental. United Flight 553 became more than a tragedy. It became a shadowy footnote in one of America's biggest political scandals, with unanswered questions still lingering in the cold Chicago air. Only weeks before that crash, on December 29, 1972, another Eastern Airlines flight met a mysterious fate. Flight 401, a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, was en route from New York to Miami. The flight was uneventful until the crew prepared for landing. As they began their final approach, they noticed the landing gear light hadn't illuminated. The crew became preoccupied, trying to troubleshoot the issue. Unaware that the autopilot had been accidentally disengaged, the plane slowly descended into the Everglades. The crash killed over 100 people, but what followed became the stuff of legend. As the wreckage was salvaged, Eastern reportedly reused parts from Flight 401 in other aircraft. That's when the stories began. Crew members and passengers on other flights claimed to see the faces of deceased pilots Captain Bob Loft and Second Officer Don Repo appear in windows and cabins. In one famous account, a flight engineer claimed Repo appeared to warn him of a mechanical issue. Later confirmed and fixed. Eastern Airlines officially denied the ghost stories, but they were so widespread that a book was written and even a TV movie was produced. Skeptics dismissed the sightings as grief-induced hallucinations. Others believe something lingered from Flight 401, an eerie presence, carried with the salvaged metal, haunted by the crash. The mystery of Flight 401 became a ghost story in the skies, where tragedy and the supernatural eerily converged. And then came May 25, 1979, a day that would mark the deadliest aviation accident on U.S. soil. American Airlines Flight 191, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, departed Chicago O'Hare bound for Los Angeles. Seconds after liftoff, the left engine separated from the wing, tearing away vital hydraulic lines and severing control systems. The plane rolled violently, stalled, and plunged into a field near the end of the runway. All 271 people on board died. 2 more perished on the ground. Video footage from a nearby photographer captured the horrifying final seconds. The engine's clean separation raised immediate questions. How could an engine just fall off a commercial jet? The investigation revealed that maintenance crews had used a forklift to remove and reinstall the engine and pylon as a single unit against the manufacturer's procedures. Cracks formed in the pylon, ultimately causing it to break off during takeoff. Yet some experts argued that the procedures were widely used and accepted across the industry. Why did this plane fail so catastrophically? Could it have been caught earlier? Why didn't warning systems prevent the disaster? Conspiracy theories were limited, but the shock and horror of Flight 191 lingers, in part because the crash happened in broad daylight, in front of so many. It was a haunting reminder that even the most routine flights can end in disaster. On October 25, 1999, a Learjet 35 carrying professional golfer Payne Stewart departed Orlando en route to Dallas. Just minutes into the flight, air traffic control lost contact. The jet continued flying on autopilot, climbing to 39,000 feet, maintaining its heading, but no one was responding. What followed was a chilling 6-hour ghost flight. Fighter jets scrambled to intercept the unresponsive aircraft. They reported seeing the cockpit windows frosted over and no signs of life inside. The plane had suffered a rapid loss of cabin pressure, likely rendering everyone on board unconscious within minutes. No emergency call, no mayday, just silence. The Learjet eventually ran out of fuel and crashed into a field near Aberdeen, South Dakota, killing all 6 on board. The press coverage was intense, focusing on Stewart's fame, but aviation experts were baffled. How had such a critical failure occurred without warning? Why didn't the backup oxygen systems engage? And how did such a modern, well-maintained aircraft go so eerily quiet? The official cause was listed as hypoxia due to cabin depressurization, but no definitive trigger was ever found. The Learjet flew across the heart of America's silent coffin in the sky, its passengers already gone. As the engines hummed and autopilot held course, the Stewart ghost flight remains one of the most quietly disturbing episodes in aviation history. Then, on January 31, 2000, Alaska Airlines Flight 261 departed Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, bound for San Francisco. The MD-83 carried 88 families' crew. As the plane cruised off the coast of California, something began to go terribly wrong. The crew reported difficulty controlling the horizontal stabilizer, the part that keeps the plane's nose level. They tried manual overrides, but nothing worked. In chilling cockpit voice recordings, the pilots remained calm as the jet suddenly pitched nose down. They fought to recover and actually managed to level the aircraft temporarily, but the mechanical failure was irreversible. Moments later, the jet entered a steep dive, spiraling into the Pacific Ocean. All 88 perished. The NTSB later determined that a critical jack screw had worn down due to poor maintenance, but investigators were horrified to discover that Alaska Airlines had extended maintenance intervals beyond what was considered safe. Mechanics had reportedly raised concerns but were ignored. Families were devastated. The crash felt preventable, the negligence unforgivable, and yet, some aspects still defy full explanation. How the failure occurred so suddenly, how much was known beforehand, and why proper action wasn't taken. Alaska 261 remains not just a tragedy, but a sobering warning about what happens when cost-cutting compromises safety. 7 flights, 7 stories, all different in circumstance, but united in mystery. From explosions that defy explanation, to ghost flights and vanished squadrons. These events remind us of the fragility of flight, and the many questions that still hang in the air, unanswered.